Hiya. I'm back from bowling on my Wednesday night league, and it's time to talk assassination. Now, as always, we take a drink, and I want to start, first of all, by saying a couple things. I know I've been gone. As many of you might have heard, I am now Wowhead's class guide manager. So, as you can expect, it's been a busy couple of days, weeks. I don't know what day it is anymore. But it's midnight launch tomorrow, today, later. So I'm excited to do that. I'm going to have a huge stream, Twitch link, description, all that stuff. I'm gonna be around streaming basically until the end of time. So join in for that. Say hi. Talk about Rogue. We're gonna have a good time. Now, let's talk assassination because we haven't talked in a bit. First of all, my plans on how to get started as assassination going into midnight. First of all, the guides are all updated. That's what I've been busy with. So I highly suggest the leveling page here. It'll go over it. It's very straightforward. But you have a leveling order here for which points to take when, and a starter build. So at level 80, you can import this. It'll work in-game at level 80, and then you just follow it down, take the points you need to take. Now, we are leveling Fatebound, and the tree looks something like this. Very straightforward stuff. We are taking Sudden Demise. Bleeds are going to be doing a lot of your damage. Improved Garrote, Internal Bleeding, Avulsion. We're basically just trying to go for as much straight damage instantly, as quick as possible during leveling. And obviously we take Kingsbane, Zoldyck, all that kind of fun stuff. But this is mostly just cleave, AoE, whatever you can do to get a little bit of extra upfront damage so you don't have that long ramp time. And then as you're leveling, you're going to take stuff like Cold-Blooded Killer, and you're going to take Implacable for the extra Envenom damage, the extra bleed damage, and then the Kingsbane upfront burst, right? More burst damage. One thing I will say, Sudden Demise still bugged in open world, so while you're leveling, might not be great. Also, I'm a little sick, sorry about my voice. You can take this point out, and you can put it into, for example, Inspiring Strike or Poisoner's Drive. Poisoner's Drive feels a little better and is also what we take in the endgame. You could also, technically, if you're not pulling big enough and you're just kind of going a little bit of cleave, you can take these points out and then play something like this. And then you would take both Dashing and Amplifying Poison instead of just Amplifying Poison or just Deadly, right? But we're taking this point in order to get to Avulsion, and Amplifying increases the damage of Envenom, so in general, even without Dragon Timber Blades, this is a good point. The other swap you can make, which is good if you're pulling Cleave a lot of the time, 3-4 targets maybe, is you can take Secondary Poisoning, and you would take this lethal dose point away. So you could do the same thing that, you do all over the place, but you would take Secondary Poisoning instead. But for level 80, something like this is generally what you want to go for. You might be asking, why no Dashing Scoundrel? Why no Blindside? Why no Regicide? Here's the thing. We're pressing Fan of Knives on 2 targets. We're pressing Crimson Tempest on 2 targets. Generally, you're going to be pulling more than one mob unless it's like a rare while you're leveling. So Mutilate stuff, especially Blindside, this just doesn't trigger that often. And Dashing Scoundrel, while good, is really good in kind of extended, longer fights, which we're not... when you're leveling, you're not really seeing that. You're stealthing in between packs. You're always having max energy. You have your T charges to fall back on if there's something that takes you a little bit longer. And with a 1-minute recharge, it'll come back. T, right? So in general, like the slow, methodical kind of 1 energy every now and then from dashing isn't really that helpful during leveling. So that's just kind of the thought process behind all of that. Otherwise, it's just, AoE upfront burst, like I said. And then on the Fatebound tree, you could go Deathstalker. You're going to get frequent procs of Darkest Night, right? The capstone. I personally don't recommend Deathstalker just because it's cringe. No one wants to play that shit. I'm just gonna be straight up with you. It's terrible. That hero talent just sucks. The mark sucks. Everything sucks. It sucks. I don't want to deal with it. Fatebound is perfectly fine. It does all the damage you need it to do. You don't need to think about it. You can enjoy leveling. You can enjoy going through the open world. It's all good. Don't have to deal with the mark. Don't have to deal with any nonsense. Fatebound's great. So I'm suggesting Fatebound. If you're a masochist and you want to play Deathstalker, go for it. It's the same thing. It's the same build. But we're avoiding this column here, mostly because there's stuff here like Crit Chance. Controlled Chaos is kind of meh, but Ravenhold Mint increases the damage of Tails coins, for example, by quite a bit. And this middle column here is like a niche utility point. Deathmark Edge Case coin, which isn't that impressive. And then a couple of energy, which kind of the same thing as Dashing Scoundrel, right? Just isn't that impressive. So we're just going damage, 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 right? More likely to match the same face. So if you flip Tails a couple times, going to be more damage. Additional caustic spatter damage, additional poison damage, crit chance, right? Just damage. More damage. Hello, ad block. Yeah, so that's the plan for leveling. Otherwise, fine. Talking about the rest of Assassination, though. I'm going to talk about some talent points here. Maybe go into the guide a little bit. So all of these builds are updated. I just want to go over some build stuff that might have changed. For example, this is the single target build in raids. Fatebound is ahead in single target as of right now. So this build specifically is hyper optimized for single target, like talent build wise. However, there are very few situations where you don't have ads. And so a lot of the theory crafting that I've been doing over the last couple weeks has been, well, if I only have a couple ads, what do I need to do, right? That we have a lot of tools now. We have things like Caustic Spatter. We have things like Crimson Tempest, even Poison Bomb, secondary poisoning, right? And there's talents here that really stink, like really stink. Doomblade is awful. Improved Poisons, not really that great. And so the question is less so what's our single target build, right? That's kind of an outdated concept because of how the raid is designed. Basically, everything has ads, everything has cleave, everything has stuff that you will need to swap to, or interrupt, or burst down, or just kind of group up and cleave, or whatever. And so what ended up happening was, yes, you have this for a single target build, but this is not the build that I'm going to be recommending. It's going to be more of a footnote on the guide. The thing that I'm actually going to be recommending is the talent build that you're going to be probably running on the majority of fights, which looks like this. Now, you'll see that Improved Poisons is gone, Doomblade is gone, and Lethal Dose is also gone. With all the tuning going on and stuff, Fatal Concoction is generally better than Lethal Dose. Lethal Dose kind of takes a back seat. And things like secondary poisoning show up. We have to take Caustic Spatter, obviously. It's a big part of our AoE. And Crimson Tempest is our bleed spread. So those are kind of necessary. And then at that point, the other things that fall into place are, for example, Poison Bomb, which is both single target and AoE, right? Secondary poisoning. This talent has gotten a little bit of a bad reputation. And that partly, I blame myself for that because obviously I haven't really talked about it or released a lot of videos lately. So just to go a little bit in depth on secondary poisoning, it looks really bad. When you open a log, it looks terrible. But there's mechanics behind secondary poisoning that you might not be thinking about on first glance that make this a really, really good talent, especially in cleave situations. And the way that it reads is also very interesting. So it says, when you apply a weapon poison, you have a 50% chance to strike a nearby enemy for whatever damage, physical, and apply the same weapon poison to them. So when you pull up a log, you'll see a little line, or like when you look at details, not detail, but like the damage meter, you'll see a line that says secondary poisoning, and it'll be doing nothing. Like it does not hit for any damage. It is really weak. However, it is hitting a lot of times, and it is proccing off of non-lethal poisons as well. Weapon poisons, it's a little bit weird because you would think it specified lethal, but it doesn't. It applies on your non-lethals as well. So your crippling poison, your atrophic poison also triggers off of secondary. The reason that's important is you're getting a lot of these tiny hits. And even though it doesn't seem like a lot, it might be doing like 1.5% or like 2% maybe. When you're applying amplifying and deadly poison all the time over and over and over, it's also feeding into their damage. And so a lot of the value of secondary poison is just inherently hidden behind amplifying and deadly poison damage because you're getting all of those additional hits. So even though that should attribute to secondary poisoning, obviously because it's applying amplifying poison, it's going to show up under amplifying poison, and it's really hard to kind of parse out how much of that it is. But more importantly, and this is something that a lot of people have been pointing out and sort of misunderstanding, is these poison applications can also proc Dashing Scoundrel, right? If you apply amplifying poison and it triggers your secondary poisoning, and that amplifying poisoning then crits, that's also giving you energy back. So it's basically a multiplier to Dashing Scoundrel. The easiest way to think about this talent, like conceptually, forget the tooltip for a second. If I told you that this talent just gives you a 50% chance for your poisons to proc a second time, that's what that talent is, right? It's a little bit of damage on top, and it only hits, like, secondary targets, right? It doesn't hit your primary target. But in essence, what this talent is it's a 50% chance to apply your poison twice. And so from that perspective, you can understand how this is kind of a good talent compared to something like, Lethal Dose or Doomblade or something like that. So this secondary poisoning will probably be a staple in a lot of builds. We're also playing it in Mythic Plus. And this sort of raid setup where you take both Crimson Tempest and Caustic Spatter for your AoE is probably the way to go. Now, obviously, there might be differing levels to this, right? You might not want Crimson Tempest because you just don't have the time to spread bleeds, or the ad dies too quick. You might drop Poison Bomb and then take, another stack of Lethal Dose because the mobs are spread out or whatever. Sorry. But in general, this is sort of the idea behind a general raid build. And then, of course, the single target build still exists. So with that out of the way, Mythic Plus builds for your dungeoning when you start off in Midnight. I'm going to show off the Deathstalker one, but I want to point out right at the start, Fatebound is good. It's not going to be the most gigabis, cutting edge, top 1% title M+ player. They're not going to play it. Mostly because things like Singular Focus exist, and Deathstalker is better in AoE, which is where a lot of the time save is, right? So Singular Focus, the prior damage, the AoE damage, double pulling, triple pulling. A lot of the time save in Mythic Plus comes from that. So you'll probably not see Fatebound being played that often in super high keys. However, for the majority of players, again, you don't have to do this. You don't have to force yourself to play this awful hero talent with the terrible rotation and quality of life. You can just play Fatebound. It's still competitive. It's better boss damage even. If you want the ultimate copium, you can just say it's better boss damage. I'm helping. Like that, you can do that. It's fine. Fatebound is fine. You don't, just because it says Deathstalker best doesn't mean you have to play it, right? With that out of the way, I'm going to show off the Deathstalker version. Fatebound, the talents on both trees are exactly the same, and you would just play the same thing. You just play Destiny Defined and whatever, thing you want. You would fill it out, bang, 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 bang. Same thing, right? Same thing. So, let's talk about it. First of all, again, Fan of Knives, 2 targets, blindside, kind of bad. Cool. There has also been conversations in the bottom half of this tree. The top half of the tree I'm just going to kind of skip over because there's nothing really of interest here. Again, Lethal Dose sucks. You see this kind of configuration here, Caustic Spatter, Amplifying Poison, Poison Bomb. We're taking Throne Precision as well because we're going to be pressing Fan of Knives a bunch, right? Top half of the tree, not much to talk about. You're never taking Doomblade, you're never taking Improved Poison, you're never taking Lethal Dose, you're never going to take Systemic Failure. Blindside kind of sucks because you're pressing Fan of Knives so often. Don't need to talk about it. The bottom third of the tree, this is where things kind of get interesting. Right now, we're taking one of two Scent of Blood, and we're taking Shrouded Suffocation. This also interacts with the tier set that we're going to have in Season 1, where Garrote will be doing more damage. In theory, you could play it like this as well. Shrouded Suffocation right now is kind of bugged and only giving 2 combo points exactly from Stealth. It should be giving 2 combo points during the entire improved Garrote window. So if you want to play Evulsion, go for it. Knock yourself out. Sorry. I'm still... It's been a long week. Okay, so one of two Scent of Blood. The thing to note about Scent of Blood is it still caps out at 20. The second point only takes it from 2% per target to 4% per target, right? But you're still maxing out at 20. So technically, putting a second point into Scent of Blood would only really help until 5 targets. In Mythic Plus, if you're pulling more than 5 targets, you're actually getting more value out of 1 point of Scent of Blood than 2, right? Because after 5 targets, your Scent of Blood is already capped. And before, we would stop rupturing once we hit 5 targets. But with Crimson Tempest making it so easy to spread bleeds now, you can spread bleeds to everything all the time. And so having 2 points of Scent of Blood and stopping yourself from rupturing, like hitting 5 and then finishing, that's a thing of the past. You just kind of want to bleed everything. And what that means is 1 point of Scent of Blood is actually more than enough. And on top of that, Sudden Demise kind of sucks. And I say kind of, we'll get back to that in a second. But otherwise, this should be pretty self-explanatory. We're taking Kingsbane and Zoldyck, of course. These are staples everywhere. Rapid Injection is very good in single target, as well as AoE, where you're going to have Envenom's effect basically always. You can take Poisoner's Drive to get the additional combo point. This helps especially in Cleave, so you don't end up in this awkward situation where like you press Fan of Knives and you're at 4 combo points, right? You start at 1, that means you get to 5 quicker. It doesn't sound that good, but if you think about it from the perspective of only needing 4 combo points instead of 5 combo points, and like the crit chance of Seal Fate and Deal Fate and stuff kind of causing issues with Fan of Knives not giving you enough combo points, Poisoner's Drive both feels good and is numerically good because it helps solve that issue. The other way to think about it is if you're an AoE, this basically guarantees that your Fan of Knives is 2 combo points, right? Think about it from that perspective. Instead of Fan of Knives giving you 1 combo point, it's going to be 2 instead. That's sort of how this talent works, because you're going to be Fan of Knives and Venom, Fan of Knives and Venom. So, from that perspective, good stuff. Inspiring Strike, this is a decent talent. It is a decent pick, but it sucks in single target. Inspiring Strike is kind of really bad right now in single target. Even with all of the extra damage you're dealing, the extra combo point from Poisoner's Drive just gives you so much more momentum and so many more Envenoms and just finishers in general that the 5% from Inspiring Strike just kind of isn't there. It doesn't have enough oomph. In AoE, this is kind of not an issue as much, and Inspiring Strike can be really good. But as a whole package, Poisoner's Drive probably just better. Dashing Scoundrel is, of course, a staple. You're going to use this for energy. This is one of our best energy talents, especially now that Venomous Wounds is nerfed. So, Dashing Scoundrel is sort of a pick that you need everywhere. Good lord. With our Apex talent, you can drop the 4th point. I'm not going to really recommend it, but for the sake of completeness, you can drop this 4th point, and you can put this kind of anywhere. The 2 biggest places you can put it is the Scent of Blood here and Regicide Reward or Evulsion. These are kind of similar. Regicides is a little awkward, especially in like AoE pulls where it's when Kingsbane ends. So like imagine you're pulling a pack of mobs. You press, like you get your stuff up, you press your Kingsbane, it's doing damage. 14 seconds later, you then get a haste buff. and then the haste buff here, right? 2% haste for every stack. So if you're at 50 stacks, for every 5 stacks, sorry. So this would be 20% haste, and then it decreases by 2 every 2 seconds. So this would essentially just be what? I'm cooked. Hold on. This would be like a 10-second buff, right? Am I doing that math right? 2 every 2, 20%? 20 seconds. 20-second buff. 20-second haste buff after a 14-second dot after, whatever, 10 seconds of ramp. This triggers just really late. Like, it just... By the time you're getting regicides, the pack is dead. Frankly. Or at least the tiny guys are dead, and then you're just stuck with this haste buff when stuff has already died. It's not ideal. You can take Sense of Blood too, but again, this is only for cleave situations, right? 3 targets, 4 targets. That's when you're getting value out of the Sense of Blood point here. Deadly Momentum is just bad. That's all I have to say about that. And then you could always take Avulsion, but it's like, it's fine, but it's not really amazing. So like all the guides will recommend 4 of 4. It is numerically kind of just the best, but it is the weakest points out of our Apex talent. And in theory, you might be able to find a situation where you can put it somewhere else. Hopefully that makes sense. Now on the Deathstalker tree, Symbolic Victory, terrible. Is, always will be. Lingering Darkness, if you read this as 30% increased in Venom damage, right? It says nature damage, but just walk with me here. If you read this as after Deathmark expires, gain 30% in Venom damage for 30 seconds, and then you compare it to Symbolic Victory, which says increases the damage of the next 2 Envenoms by 18%, right? 18 and 18 is 36. So 36% increased damage on an Envenom versus 30% increased damage on an Envenom for 30 seconds, right? If you count this 18 as 1 Envenom, right? Your next 2 Envenoms is 18. Let's just say 36% on a single Envenom. Well, that's 1 Envenom, and this is 30% for 30 seconds. Not just 1 Envenom. This is a full half minute. I don't know what they're thinking with this. Like, Symbolic Victory is so bad. It used to even be, like, almost good, but now we don't even have the Shiv window. So, like, there's no Shiv window buffing these Envenoms. And then Lingering Darkness also is buffing all the poison damage, and Poison Bomb, and Caustic Spatter. Like, inherently... What? So, always take Lingering Darkness. Bait and Switch, very good. Makes your evasion strong, and you get to use it as a defensive. And then you have Momentum Despair versus Follow the Blood. Now, I will say Follow the Blood right now is better. That is only because Crimson Tempest hits like a truck. Crimson Tempest, for no good reason, is doing insane damage. It is hitting ridiculously hard. Realistically, they could cut this from 100% of attack power down to like 25. Like, it is that crazy. So Follow the Blood is just very good. It is straight up just very good because it's increasing Crimson Tempest damage by a lot. It's increasing Phantom Knives damage by a lot. Phantom damage. Momentum of Despair, if they happen to nerf Crimson Tempest, would be very good. Especially in cleave situations again, you have an increased crit strike chance on Phantom Knives and Crimson Tempest, and increased crit strike damage. The crit strike damage is kind of whatever, but with increased crit chance, again, you get increased combo points. You get more applications of poison through Thrown Precision, right? So you get a lot of this sort of ethereal, it feels better, it plays better type of situation. Right now, this is like 1.5% worse than Follow the Blood. If you want to, or if you're just leveling with Deathstalker, or if you're doing like small pulls with friends or whatever, learning the dungeon, you can play Momentum. go for it. But Follow the Blood technically is just the better option. Otherwise, the new talents are all just kind of whatever, right? Crit damage, when you consume it, has a chance, or when you have when you apply it, you have a chance to instantly consume a stack. When you consume a stack, it deals a little bit of AoE. Just good stuff, right? It's Deathstalker. Nothing's really changed. And that brings us to some rotational things that I want to point out, and some Bis list stuff. We'll talk rotation first, and then we'll go into the gear, because the gear is frankly a little bit uninspiring and a little bit unimportant at this point. Now, for the people who have made it this far, and for some reason you haven't played Assassination, you don't know what's going on, there is a beginner page. You can find it on the side here, Basics. This will get you up to speed. If you've never played Assassination before, first of all, hi, 25 minutes in, hello there. But this has very bare basics. What are you trying to do, right? Every guide should have this. It's very straightforward. You can copy a little build here, hit some dummies, follow a very simple sort of priority list. Do that first. Once you're there, the rotation page is going to be a little bit more in-depth. Now, we have togglers at the top, and there's stuff here. Now, the things to note about Midnight that are different from pre-patch, or different from recent Assassination. There's this line here that you need to vanish followed by Garrote to apply improved Garrote, and it should be lined up with Deathmark. Now, the thing about this is, if you're simming, Vanish will desync itself from Deathmark, and you might be going, why is it doing that? The guide says it should be lined up. Here's the thing. When you're playing Assassination and you have Razor Wire, which is I'll show you here if I log in, and you're playing with Razor Wire, it increases the duration of Garrote. And so what ends up happening is, in our opener, for example, in our AoE opener, we're extending improved Garrote by double casting Garrote to get the additional pandemic timing. We do that in single target as well now. So with the increased timer on Garrote here, if I just walk up, for example, to a dummy, and I go bop, and I go bop, this is a 30-second Garrote. I can use my cooldowns, I can do all my stuff. 30-second Garrote is a long time. It's a long, long time. So if you're trying to sync Vanish up with Deathmark, and also use it in your opener, you're gonna just kind of have to lose a cast. Either you're holding Deathmark and Kingsbane for 30 seconds to line it up with Vanish, which I do not recommend unless there's a fight-specific timing, because that's kind of troll and you're probably losing a cast of Deathmark or a cast of Kingsbane, and that's really bad. So that's awkward. You can't just kind of rip it after your first set of Garrotes. Oops. You then have the option of just not casting Vanish in your opener, which is kind of what we're doing here. Like, I'm suggesting you don't cast Vanish in your opener. And then you just sync it up with Deathmark. Now, that will be the highest burst option. And this is why it's sort of recommended, because if you're pressing cooldowns, you probably want the burst to be there, so you're going to Vanish for improved Garrote, and after that, it syncs up with Deathmark and you're good to go. However, you're losing a cast of Vanish doing that, because you're holding for Deathmark, right? You're holding your Vanish, you're not casting in your opener, you're casting at 2 minutes. If you're going to lose a cast of Vanish, though, it can be better, especially in shorter fights, to simply Vanish on cooldown. And that's kind of what it says here. If you Vanish on cooldown, you do lose the time inside of Deathmark. You do lose the improved Garrote in Deathmark. But because Garrote itself lasts so long, Vanish outside of Deathmark is kind of okay. Deathmark is 16 seconds. So if you go back to the 30-second Garrote or whatever, Deathmark only covers half of that time. So you're getting 50% more Garrote damage for half of your like increased 100% damage, right? And then the other half is still just the baseline 50%. So it has a lot less bite compared to where it used to because it has so much higher uptime. And so that uptime is causing Vanish to kind of be worth desyncing. It is very awkward. I 100% understand that it is very awkward. So in general, again, I suggest you just hold Vanish for 2 minutes and then line it up with Deathmark. That is probably the easiest way to go about it. But keep that in mind that you can just kind of rip Vanish whenever, and it's fine. It is totally fine. The last thing that should be noted in single target is Implacable. We do play around our Apex talent, and no, you still cannot track the Apex talent using the cooldown manager. Blizzard why? But it stacks up to 80, and when you stack up to 80, you stop envenoming. Let me show you what that kind of looks like. So let me apply just a poison, whatever, doesn't matter. So let's say that you are just kind of doing your rotation, whatever. Let's pretend like I don't have a sword equipped because I was playing Outlaw. Let's say you're just doing your rotation, blah, 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 right? As you envenom, you get stacks of Implacable. So that's 20. Now we're at 35. Now we're at 50. Now we're at 65. Now we're at 80. Okay, so here you build combo points, you refresh if you need to, and you stop. You let this envenom drop. Hands off keyboard, let it drop. Now you get your energy back, right, from your Implacable, and you go again. So 20, 35, 50, 65, 80. Build your combo points. Stop. Right, I'm going to refresh my Rupture because I need to. Bang, now it triggers, now I can envenom again. So that's the loop that you always do. You don't really care about the timer on envenom in this case. Envenom's timer is so long that the sort of like traditional pooling doesn't really matter. Obviously, if you're low on energy, you can just kind of hold. But even now, I'm at 65. I'm just gonna let this drop. So now I get Implacable. Boom. We go again. I'm going to refresh Rupture. Here I'm gonna let envenom drop again. Boom, Implacable, right? And we just continue from there. Now, obviously, I only have one poison to try and emulate this better and like show you how it is when it's slow. But you're just going, whatever. And if you ever get to a point where you're empty and you need to let envenom drop, let it drop, let Implacable go, right? Just let it go. That is the gameplay loop. And the thing to note is you don't have to get to 80. You don't have to get to 80. That's not really the goal. Especially because the first one gives you 20%, right? So if you envenom once, you have 20%, 20 stacks. Every additional one after that is 15, right? So every additional envenom after the first is weaker than the first. So you can think about this as like one envenom is 20, two envenoms is 35, right? So now each envenom is 17 and a half. The next one is 15, so the average energy you're getting per the envenom is going down. Which means, if you're running out of energy after 2 envenoms, and you're like barely getting it in, you're like barely able to squeeze that last envenom in, just let it drop. Just let it drop, right? Just let it drop. You're gonna get a little bit more energy out of it, and the uptime that you're losing on the envenom buff, not really that relevant. So, whenever you run out of energy or whenever you hit the maximum stacks on Implacable, just let envenom drop, get the energy back. If you run out earlier, let it drop, it's fine. Get the energy back. That's the management of Implacable. That's the energy management that is lacking in pre-patch right now, and that's how you're going to be pooling, right? So keep that in mind. AoE priority, same thing. There is, however, a cringe thing that I have to talk about, and if I don't, people will get up on me. Crimson Tempest is really strong. I said this earlier, it's insanely strong. And so there is kind of a cringe thing here where you should be Crimson Tempesting and then following it up with an Envenom. However, if you're in big AoE, talk about like 8, 9, 10, 12, 15 mobs, you can ignore pressing Envenom. You can just ignore this line. And you can just Crimson Tempest, Crimson Tempest, Crimson Tempest, Crimson Tempest, Crimson Tempest, Crimson Tempest over and over and over and over until everything has bleeds. If you're in 15 targets, 20 targets, just hit Crimson Tempest until everything has bleeds, and then Envenom into your cooldowns. It sucks. It's really cringe. The other problem with this is it is entirely pad. Oh, it's so pad. It is insane. You are doing no prio damage doing this. Even just weaving in the Envenoms whenever you hit 5 combo points, yes, you spread a little bit slower, but you are dealing so much extra prio damage. And if you're pulling 20 mobs, I guarantee you there is a prio mob in there somewhere that you will want to hit. Like, it's unavoidable that there is something in there that you need to prio. It's gonna happen. So, personally, I am still going to recommend that you finish on 5. But I would be remiss to not talk about the fact that you can just avoid it. I hate it. It sucks. Please nerf Crimson Tempest, Blizzard. I please. But this is a thing that you can do. Opener-wise, I vaguely talked about this. We are extending Improved Garrote by casting Envenom. Holy Jesus. We are extending Improved Garrote by casting another Garrote at the end of the window. So it's a 6-second window. We're improving Garrote at the end and at the start. Same thing in AoE, except we need to do it before we're spreading. Now, you can technically swap this around, and this double Garrote thing assumes that Shrouded Suffocation gets fixed, and you will be getting 3 combo points for each of these. As of right now, with the bug, technically what you would need to do is you need to Garrote, Fan of Knives to get combo points. And so you can change this around. Assassination openers in general are very conceptual. They're not like hard-coded GCD by GCD perfect. So, for example, what you could do is you could Garrote, Fan of Knives, Rupture, and then you could Deathmark, Kingsbane, Garrote, and then start spreading bleeds. That's something you can do. But in general, double Garrote to extend the duration, get your Rupture up, spread, dump into Envenom for your combo points. GG, well played. I'm also going to update the icon here, but this is just what people understand as a combat potion right now. But this will update with the Midnight Potion for those interested. There's also some tips here. I talk about the Implacable thing, which is exactly what I said. Darkest Night here, there's a weird thing where you can press Shiv in order to give your Darkest Night. I'm not recommending Deathstalker for the majority of players. This is here. You can read it. It's cringe. I don't care. We're skipping over it. Let's talk gear. First things first, crit and haste, very good. Mastery, still good. Versatility, terrible. It's the same thing as always, except mastery kind of takes a second fiddle to haste. And crit is still going to be your main thing. This is true for both Fatebound and Deathstalker. However, and I say this every single time and people kind of misconstrue it, Deathstalker prefers a little bit more mastery than crit, right? Fatebound has Deal Fate, so you get extra combo points from crit, and you get like an extra bit of crit chance and all that stuff, and like blah, 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 and the coins can crit, right? Like Fatebound Tails can crit. On Deathstalker, Darkest Night guarantees your Envenom will crit, right? That big Envenom payoff at the end of your mark, that is guaranteed to crit, and there's not a lot of crit interactions on Deathstalker itself, except for the increased crit damage, which is kind of whatever. So both hero talents are following crit haste mastery. Both hero talents follow crit haste mastery. They like the same stats. However, if you are min-maxing, Fatebound will want a little bit heavier crit than mastery, and Deathstalker will want a little bit heavier mastery than crit. The priority doesn't change, to be fair, right? Again, the same priority. However, mastery is going to be weighted a little bit higher on Deathstalker compared to where Fatebound is, right? Fatebound is a little bit heavier crit, but it's still crit haste mastery. Hopefully that clears that up. Gear-wise, though, this is Season 1, right? All of this stuff is not available for the next couple of weeks, but I'm just going to talk about it. 4 pieces of tier, as always. We're going to craft a dagger. We're going to craft wrists. same as always. Not really much going on here. We are playing Puzzle Box. More on that later with the trinket sections. And otherwise, this is just mastery, haste, crit mastery, crit mastery, crit haste, tier set, crit haste, tier set, crit haste, tier set, crit haste, tier set, crit haste, verse mastery. There's also a crit mastery dagger, which is basically equal. Doesn't really matter. The point is that it's a myth track dagger, right? I did include some preseason items here that you want to keep a track of before the season actually launches. There is a dagger that you can drop, which is Haste Mastery. That's pretty good. You'll want a high item level dagger, obviously, going into week 1 so that you can get some damage out. Main hand dagger is the biggest upgrade, so make sure you're getting a big main hand dagger. There is also a set of a ring set here. The 2 set isn't that impressive. However, they are full stat rings with a set bonus. So the set bonus is literally just free damage. It's just free. So pre-season, if you're farming, go ahead and farm yourself a set of these rings. They're both good stats. Haste Mastery, Crit Haste. Perfectly fine rings. Good statted rings with a bonus. And then there's this 2-minute trinkets, obviously. This is probably one of the better 2-minute trinkets, and it's just a haste steroid for 15 seconds. So macro it to Deathmark, easy peasy, super free, 2-minute cooldown trinket. Those are kind of the things you're looking for. Otherwise, literally just as high as an item level as you can get. If you can get something with crit haste or crit mastery or haste mastery, that's good. But even a verse piece is totally fine as long as it's high item level, right? And preseason in general doesn't really matter that much. You're just putting like weathered crests and adventure crests that you're going to have a billion of anyways into random pieces of gear you're going to replace. Doesn't matter. Just equip item level. These sections are new for the raid. If you have a raid leader that really wants to know your best in slot pieces that you're like going to be looking out for, these are the things you're going to be looking out for. From the raid, these are the things you're going to be looking out for Mythic Plus. There's explanations on all of these. You can go over it yourself. And then we're going to talk trinkets. So this is where things get a little bit confusing. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so it's a little easier. Obviously, anything below, or like in B tier or below, is completely unusable, as is tradition. So we're skipping over D. C tier is probably unusable as well. B tier is when we start getting stuff that's like semi-usable but not great. So some stuff to point out. This is just an open world trinket, and it's pretty good. It's pretty decent. Not great, obviously, but for an open world trinket, not bad at all. This drops from the Devouring Invader, according to this comment, which is a rare, I think. Yeah, it's just a rare out in the world in Zul'Aman. So, farm that. That's probably good for like day 1, day 2. But once you get to dungeons, there are just infinitely better options. Heart of Wind, this is the first dungeon trinket that I would actually kind of equip if I got it. It's just a haste stack, right? So, agility, proc, you get haste. Cool. This is a raid thing. It won't be out until the raid. It does a bit of damage. Again, this is nature damage from an item, so our mastery and stuff does not work on this. This is just simply flat damage. It's okay in AoE, but again, this is nothing really to sneeze at. And then the first usable sort of on-use trinket is this 1 minute 30 on use. This is very similar to Signet of the Priory from previous seasons. You get a bunch of haste, and then everyone else also gets a little bit of speed. It's a 1.5 minute cooldown, though, which is not great. However, it drops from the first boss of the raid. Very first boss of the raid. So, this is something you can get very early on when the season launches. It's not amazing, but, you know, if you happen to get it, it'll do. I hate this cough! And then we get to the good stuff. A tier is what I would consider the good stuff. If you're equipping this and you send me a log, I'm going to look at this and be like, all right, it's fine. Solar Flare Prism. This is just crit chance, and it's more crit chance if the target is lower health. Zoldyck is also more damage when you're lower health. Blindside procs more when the enemy is lower health. You see the little synergy going on here? So Solar Flare Prism, really good for us, especially for execute damage. And this is something that I can honestly see being equipped if there's a very, like if one of the end bosses that wasn't tested, if one of those end bosses has a really, really strong execute phase for some reason, this is something you might actually just want. Like straight up, this is something you just might want to equip. It's not crazy good, but it is very usable. Then you get Vessel of Tortured Souls. This is just a agility stat stick. However, I believe you have to run around and collect these souls. If you're able to run around and collect the souls, this is pretty good. But it's basically Antenna but cringe. So, probably don't recommend this, even though it is a very good trinket. For most people, unless you're like forcing yourself to go get the souls and whatever, probably not great. Emberwing Feather, we already talked about this. This is the standard dungeon kind of 2-minute cooldown, haste proc, whatever. We're talking about this later. And then there's the Radiant and Umbral Plume. This drops from Beleren. This is the Midnight Falls, the last raid. The last raid that's getting released. And this trinket is actually one trinket, and you can swap it. So it has a 5-minute cooldown. You can swap it to either the crit version here, the blue one, or you can swap it to the mastery version here, the yellow one. In general, the mastery one is going to be slightly better. If you have like good gear, like best in slot gear or whatever, the mastery one will be better. However, obviously they give the same amount of stat. This one gives crit, this one gives mastery. So if crit is better for you and you're like missing a couple of crit pieces or whatever, you will want to sim the blue one as well. You want to sim both of these because the blue one might just straight up be better for your gear. Like just flat out might be better. Gaze of the Alnseer is really overtuned and it gives a bunch of agility. This is off of the single target, or not the single target, the single boss raid, the second one that's opening up from Chimeras. This is gonna be Bis for basically every spec. Like I'm just gonna tell you right now, the competition on this trinket is going to be fierce. Every motherfucker in your raid is going to want this thing. Everyone is going to want this thing. Doesn't matter if they're caster, doesn't matter if they're melee, doesn't matter if they're a tank. Everyone's going to want this. So, get ready to fight for that one. And then you have Puzzle Box, the ultimate cringe. This has a 2-second channel. So you have to sit there and channel for 2 seconds in order to get this mastery buff. And it is technically best in slot. However, if for some reason the 2-second channel is really cringe, Emberwing Feather, kind of fine. However, number 2, these plume trinkets, right, the mastery and the crit plume, these are really, really strong, and you can actually use these alongside Gaze. So if you want to use the Alnseer, and then you don't know what to use as your second trinket, and you don't like Puzzle Box, and you have a plume, plume is really strong, and you can run double passive. This is a one of the rare situations where double passive trinkets are playable. Gaze of the Alnseer and Solar Flare Prism is also an acceptable double passive option. Even though like Emberwing Feather and Prism, these two are going to be like a little bit worse than Puzzle Box if played correctly. But in general, like Alnseer plus Plume, totally acceptable. Like not even a like super min max like using double passive like this compared to Alnseer and Puzzle Box is like 0.3% worse. It is basically nothing. So if you do manage to get a plume and you happen to get an Alnseer on top of that, you're basically Bis, is what I'm saying. Like you just forget the box. Like boxes sucks. Like playing Deathstalker with a Puzzle Box might be the ultimate masochist move. Like you truly hate yourself if you're playing Deathstalker with this Puzzle Box. So forget that exists. And then for your sparks, last thing to cover, vaguely cover this. You're going to craft a dagger first, as per always. And then you're going to put Dark Moon Sigil Hunt on this. This is just secondary stats depending on what you hit. It's really not that much. I have a thing here. Based on the type, you get either haste or crit or mastery or verse. Now, obviously, this depends per dungeon very heavily, but from the raid perspective, you're going to be getting mostly haste as well as mastery. And then there's going to be the end boss, Lura, the like Naru thing, is going to give you verse. But in general, you're going to get haste and mastery, and it's pretty good. And Hunt in general is just very good, so we're just going to be putting that on our dagger, calling it a day. Your next one is going to be Arcana Wave Lining. Now, this is going to give you primary stat, and it's going to also give an ally primary stat. This is our best embellishments, just selfish DPS-wise, but even if it wasn't, the fact that it's giving a little bit of primary stat to an ally is also just really good. So even if this simmed like a little bit lower, like if it sims 0.2% worse or whatever than something else that you simmed, just the fact that you're buffing someone else is going to make that up, basically, because the ally buff part is not being simulated. It's just the single player stat that is being simulated. So that's just good. And then early on in the season, obviously, the amulet and the ring are going to be good value crafts, but you're just going to try and replace low-level pieces. If you're getting to this third spark and you don't have a slot and you're just not dropping it ever, go ahead and craft something. Like, it's fine. But in general, that is everything for Assassination. I did a lot of work making this guide good. There's stuff to import everywhere. If you want to play Deathstalker, I am providing all the builds for everything. If you hate Deathstalker, you can play Mythic Plus and Delves. Again, they're viable. They're just not the best. You can look at all this stuff. There's details and all that things and whatever. The guide is in depth. I promise it is there. And if it's not there, then ping me and I will put it there. Now, the last thing I want to talk about, which is a little bit of a footnote. There's been a build going around in pre-patch that some people claim is much better and feels a lot better and is a lot more energy and blah, 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 blah. And I want to kind of talk about that as an ending note. The way it works is it does something like this. It gets rid of that and does, like, it just kind of takes talents like this or whatever, right? Or it does this, or it does this, right? Like something like this. You might have seen something like this. There's been an unnamed YouTuber of misinformation that has been spreading this, spreading this build a lot. There are some pros to this, definitely. There are some major cons to this, but most importantly, if anyone is telling you that this is more energy, they are straight up wrong. There's obviously permutations like you know, whatever. There's the permutations like this that are also floating around. But whoever tells you that this is more energy is straight up incorrect. And I will tell you why. Because there is no difference from this energy-wise compared to the stuff we dropped compared to the regular build. So let's look at what we dropped, right? We dropped Envenom damage, and a combo point, which the combo point, again, is technically, like, faster, better in that regard. Like, it's more speed in your rotation, if that's the concern. And you have Dragon Tempered Blades. So you're getting rid of a poison, which, again, is less secondary poisoning, which is also less Dashing Scoundrel energy. And that increase in Dashing Scoundrel energy also is more than the impact of Regicide's rewards. So the energy that you lost because you're proccing secondary poisoning less is not made up by Regicide's reward. Also, earlier we talked about Regicide's reward being kind of meh because it only procs towards the end of a pull. That's still true, right? That's still true. At the start of the pull, when you're ramping and when you're like actually running out of energy before you have your bleed spread to everything, and before you're casting Fan of Knives, right? And you're hitting Crimson Tempest, which is an expensive button. Before you're getting into gear and you're able to press Fan of Knives and you're able to get the energy off, this isn't proccing. Like, the point in time where you're feeling slow and sluggish is not when you have Regicide's Reward. And other than that, this isn't energy, this isn't energy, this isn't energy, this isn't energy. Like, none of this is energy. You can make the argument that if you take Blindside, you're getting more energy back, but, like, you're not gonna be pressing Mutilate and AoE. On top of that, this build is better in heavy AoE. I'm not gonna deny it. This build is a little bit better in heavy AoE, and your overall damage might even look better. If you're running, like, really low keys, Sudden Demise might be doing 7-8% of your damage overall. But Sudden Demise is pad. It's not damage that is speeding up a key, right? And the execute damage on Sudden Demise is damage recovery. It's not increasing damage, right? It's damage that would have happened anyways, regardless, except it's inefficient, right? You need 150 points of bleed damage remaining in order to deal 100 damage. So you're technically still losing damage, but you're getting the Sudden Demise pops because the target is going to die, and you're running, like, low keys, or you're running, like, heroic dungeons or whatever, and things are just blowing up, right? You're running through the dungeon, things are just blowing up. So the damage from the execute on Sudden Demise is not something people generally count as, like, damage, like, worthwhile damage. It's essentially just padding. In fact, it might even be stealing damage from other players in your group, right? That have that still have buffs going, still have stuff going on. So Sudden Demise's damage itself, while it might look better on a damage meter, is not something we take into consideration. So this build might be better in those really, really high AoE, like, speed clearing heroics, speed walking, or speed walking through time walkings, speed running through, like, +4s. If you're running low dungeons like that, by all means, if you want to have some fun and you want to, like, try and relive the glory days of Bleed build, that's fantastic. The major downside of this, which is why I'm never going to recommend this build, and I am going to say this out loud, Bleed build is dead. This is going backwards to a time where Assassination does no single target. Like, straight up, not only is this build not faster, it is also about 10 to 15% worse in single target. 10 to 15% worse. Because you're taking what is essentially pointless talents here, right? These are all pointless. You're taking a really weak talent because you don't want to take Amplifying, and you're skipping all of the, like, good Envenom talents. It's a really big loss. Really, really big. You might be doing a little bit more AoE, you might be getting these Sudden Demise pops, and your damage meter might look huge because you're padding like hell with 8% Sudden Demise damage. This build sucks. Like, even if numerically it looks okay, for anyone that's taking M+ seriously, this build is terrible. It's just straight up not good. And I would highly suggest you reconsider this. Something like this, like, Bleed build style of talent setup, it might be fun. It might be great for, like, your little, keys with your alts that you have. Like, your friends are running on alts or whatever. You're leveling. You're just having a good time. By all means. If you're trying to be competitive, please do not play this. Just please don't. Please don't. You're not. This is not. This is perverted. Like, this is a perverted build. You just go back to doing this thing, right? Go back to this. Just save yourself the headache, and just play for prio damage, play for single target, play for boss damage, lose a little bit, like a couple of percent of AoE, but do incredibly more prio, incredibly more single target. Get that extra combo point from Poisoner's Drive. Your rotation will feel fine. It's the same energy. That's it. Rant over. And it's under an hour. 10 seconds before an hour. We did it. Okay, anyways, I'm gonna get a good night of sleep. We're gonna do a long stream tomorrow for the release of Midnight. Please show up, say hi, talk and yap, and I'll yap back at you maybe. Unless you say something mean, in which case I will cry. If you have questions, of course, comments, stream, everywhere, Ravenholt. If you don't like one of the guides on a spec or whatever, don't let me know. I don't want to do my job tomorrow because it's midnight release. I don't care that you don't like one of the spec guides. And then once midnight releases, tell me after, and then, well, give me feedback on the guides and whatever. But not tomorrow. Anyways, bye. Have a good one. See you later.